And so when we took risks, by the time we got there, we were thoughtful about it and we played it out financially and operationally and every other way. But we really definitely have taken risks, but they were thoughtful by the time we got there. And honestly, I mean, in every success story, there's a whole series of things. One is skill and hard work. Two, I think, is the seeing and seizing, the kind of identifying opportunities, but also a little bit of it's luck too. And we've had that along the way. And I know sometimes people have bad luck, but we're if you take risks with bumpers, I think it's helpful.
Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life by Atticus Incorporated. What if you could hang out with successful small and solo law firm attorneys, ask them about their successes and failures, their business strategies and mindset habits, then take an insight or two to guide your own growth in your practice? Each week, Steve Riley shares an in-depth look at how to work less while maintaining high client service standards, reduce your stress levels while growing your income, and find time to make changes when you are time-starved. Steve is a lawyer coach for more than 20 years and a former trial attorney. His goal is to provide strategies to help you balance your lives and grow your practice. Now, here's Steve.
Hi, Steve Riley. Welcome to the Great Practice, Great Life show. And today we have a fabulous guest. I was warning her because I was telling her there's so many different things I want to talk to her about. There's so many different places to go with her. And there's so many amazing, innovative things she's done. So it's not really fair to her. It's probably not fair to you as an audience, but we're going to zig and zag and talk about a couple of different things. But Sue-Ann, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Steve, so much. It's great to be here. I'm honored that you would even ask me to be part of this.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, but I've known you for years, and you were part of the famous Dallas Dominate Your Market group. You've worked with Glenn Gutek as a coach. You've done a lot of things with Atticus over the years. And in 2017, you won what we used to call the Innovators Award. Oh, yeah, you're showing it off. Go ahead, put it up there. Oh, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. And I like the fact
I still have it displayed.
You still have it displayed. And I want to talk about three things with you today, maybe four. I want you to talk a little bit about your journey, because you and your former partner, and your new partner, I guess, have a knack for niching, a knack for innovating, a knack for marketing. And I really want our audience to listen and hear from you some of the lessons, some of the ways that you've done this. And you've just always been, it seems like, about 12 months ahead, maybe 24 months ahead of the rest of the people in your field, in some cases, years ahead. So let's talk. Let's just back up. Let's tell everybody what you do and currently, and then we'll talk about how you got into it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you kind of were hitting on all the topics that I'm passionate about. So I currently have a firm of roughly 35 attorneys, and we do a very niche practice within employment law. We do workplace investigation, so anything in the workplace around harassment, discrimination, retaliation, or misconduct of any form, whether it be embezzlement or bullying. We do workplace investigations. We also do campus sexual assault investigations, and we do hearing officer work on the campus related to those investigations. And we just recently launched a financial services investigations line as well. So that's only a narrow niche within employment law. And prior to doing this, I was an employment defense attorney for roughly 17, 18 years. And we're really unique, and we're super excited about that because there are a lot of lawyers that do this type of work. They primarily tend to be either solo or small firms, something less than 5 or 10, or they're the very big international firms that have a large employment defense group, and they will assign people to do the workplace investigation. So we're unique in our size in this niche area.
But you're also unique in I think you're unique in how you've approached it. You're unique in how you've developed your position in the marketplace. So let's talk just for a few minutes how you got into it, and what, as briefly as we can, but I want you to talk about what your story was, like how you were doing the defense and how this new business or a niche business developed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm not big on cliches. I don't love them. I'm far more practical, but there is a cliche that I think sort of runs through everything that I've done and we've done collectively, and that is see and seize. It's really identifying opportunities. And I think that's what we've done pretty consistently. And maybe part of it is because I think I'm super fascinated by people and I'm curious. And I've always been a study since even law school on who the successful law firms were and who the successful managing partners were. I have a funny story about that later we can come back to. But I've always studied that. And so there were, I think, a series of things that helped me to see and seize or identify this opportunity. And really, uh, I was an employment defense lawyer since 1993. And along the way, a few things happened. There were some statutes along the way that really changed employment law. And then 1986, a big year in the employment law world. And that's when the United States Supreme Court had a big ruling where they said basically that they recognized sexual harassment was a form of sexual discrimination. So that really changed our world in employment law. And then a few years later was the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas hearings. And then that really brought to the forefront these communications about sexual harassment in the workplace. And then following that in 2006, which pay attention to that date, was when the first time when Tarana Burke really introduced the Me Too vernacular. Now, it didn't really take off until later, 2016-ish, somewhere around there, 2017. But right about that time, workplace investigations started to come on the scene and started to explode a little bit. And that's right when I left the partnership of a law firm and started my own firm by myself to do workplace investigations. And I saw an opportunity there, but I can't tell you, Steve, it was so fascinating because I don't see myself as a risk person. I think more risk adverse. So the idea I would leave a very comfortable law firm partnership and start my own firm was pretty unreal. But there was, I think, this opportunity, and I got into workplace investigations just as they were about to take off as a solo practitioner.
Well, it's interesting because you've identified a couple of things. Number one, you've studied success. So you actually start to study what does a great managing partner look like? What does a great law firm look like? So you've studied success. You paid attention to cultural and legal trends. And this is an interesting thing because a lot of lawyers don't do that. They just adjust. They're just like, oh, okay, so this is what the new law is, or this is what's happening here. You seem to have a good instinct and a good sense about how society's shifting. What was it that made you jump from the law firm into workplace investigations when you said, okay, this is the thing, this is the trend, this is the direction I think I'm going to go?
Well, interesting because I really did love the firm I was at, and shout out to Hans and Bridget. I have so much respect for them, and I would have been a happy litigator there. But there were two things, I think. One was I had done a few workplace investigations and I loved it. And I thought, I could be a good, happy litigator and I think I'd do my clients well. But I felt like I can really excel and be the best investigator that ever happened. And so that was exciting to me. And also, I saw an opportunity because right at that point in time, there were really primarily solo practitioners doing it. And I don't know that it was fully formed at the time, but I did see an opportunity that, wow, you could really take this and grow it and scale it. And it was right about that time you had mentioned my business partner earlier, Deborah Maddox. Mad love for her. She's now retired. I have a new business partner, but Deborah did the same journey as I did. And in around that 2006 timeframe, she left her position, started a solo firm. And we started colliding and we started having clients. I think it was two clients and one friend approached each of us individually and said, I know both of you two need to meet. You're the same person in many ways. You're doing the same thing. You have the same quality of work. And so we did, we matched and we both agreed you could scale this. This was something that we really wanted to distinguish ourselves from the other people who were solo practitioners and doing great work, or the big defense firms that would do it sometimes. We wanted to grow a big firm and be known as neutrals. We were not litigating or advocating on one side or the other. So we saw that opportunity, and it has taken off.
So, Anne, for people who've never been exposed to this before and are struggling with what do you mean by workplace investigations, could you give an example of like who would hire you, what the situation would be, and why would they choose you versus anyone else?
So, good question. We are hired by the employer or the campus in all situations. So, we're hired by the private sector, whether it's a high tech company in Silicon Valley or whether it's a mom and pop owned restaurant in Sacramento. So, private, very small to very, very large to international clients. We're also hired by the public sector, whether it's a government or city, municipality, or we are hired in the public sector as well. So almost any time you think of a workplace or a campus, we can be retained, because in all of those settings you have humans that are working together. And anytime you have two or more humans working together, there can be conflict or concerns. And so if one of the employer's employees has a complaint, is concerned that somebody is mistreating them, maybe because they believe they're sexually harassed, or maybe they feel like they didn't get promoted because they're over the age of 55, or, and by the way, the age limit is 40 for most protections, interesting. But if somebody feels that they are mistreated in some way, they can file a complaint with their employer. It's typically before they file a lawsuit in court. So the employer, based upon some case law, has an obligation to conduct an investigation to resolve this dispute of fact. They need somebody to come in and say, employee A did not mistreat them, or they did mistreat them. And based upon the outcome of that, they get to take action. It results in a student being expelled from school if it's determined that they engaged in a sexual assault on campus. Sometimes it means that an individual CEO is exonerated because we determined they didn't engage in some conduct. And the clients can be from private to public, from small to international.
All right. So, how does this work? So, they bring you in, you do an investigation. What's an investigation look like? I know it sounds like a very basic question to you, but if 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 you were coming into a campus and I was the president of the university and hiring you, what would that scope of work look like?
So first we define exactly that. What is the scope? What is the question? What's the allegation? What's the concern? What question do you need answered so you can take action? Is it, more likely than not that this individual engaged in conduct that was sexual in nature, that was offensive and unwelcome? Then we'll answer that question. So it requires us to do a lot of witness interviews. So you have to be really good at planning and preparing and communicating and gathering information and building rapport with people. It's a very people-oriented job. We have to be strategic in terms of what evidence we can gather outside of witnesses. So it might mean doing a forensic review on phones or emails. It might be doing a site visit, gathering as much evidence as we can. And once we've done that, completed that part of it, we then will present our findings to the decision maker, typically orally and or in a report type format. Based on our findings, then the employer, the decision maker, will decide what action, if any, to take to fix the workplace concern.
Got it. Very good. Thank you for taking the time to take that apart. So you were basically you and Deborah were on the cutting edge of this new practice, this new industry, this new niche.
Yes, there was for sure some pioneers before us, some solo practitioners that had already launched this, and are some of my dearest, closest friends. We're we know each other throughout the country, honestly. And while we're competitors, we're extraordinarily collaborative. So there were a few pioneers, and I can get back to them because we formed an association together before us. But when we launched, it was just really taking off. And like I said, we really are unique in our size in this very niche area.
How did you, when you decide to scale, how did you and Deborah think about scaling? How did you guys do it?
Atticus, Atticus, Atticus.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm very serious about this. And maybe I'll just go back for a minute because it plays into what I'm about to share. And that is when Deb and I formed our business together. So keep in mind, we had been solo practitioners for a couple of years before we launched together in 2010. We did a few things when we started our business together. One was we went to an organizational coach, which was fascinating. Before you invest this much time and money into a partnership, we really wanted to know each other and make sure we had good communication. Second was we decided we wanted to be equal partners. We're not going to look at originations or billables. The two of us are going to build this thing together and we're going to be united. And we're each going to appreciate each other's skills, even if one originates more or bills more. The third thing we did, and keep in mind, this is when we were in our, I don't know what I was, like early 50s. We went to a succession planning conference in Florida led by Atticus. And we found Atticus truly by Googling it. Nobody referred us. We just knew then that we wanted to build a business that would be sustainable, we could pass on to the next generation, that we could build and somebody would want it. And so we found Atticus and we flew across the country to Florida. And I'll never forget because we walked into this room full of men who were much older than we were. And we had the most spectacular conference ever. And I think we all respected each other and they were kind of wondering what we were doing. They perceived us as being young and new in our business. And we perceived them like, wow, you just started to think about succession planning now. But it turned out it was great. So that was our first introduction to Atticus.
It's interesting because we've done different variations of that workshop over the years. Everything from how to build your law firm for sale to calling it the exit strategy workshop to buying and selling a law firm. We've done that off and on for years. It's one of the more fascinating workshops, and that's pretty much what I would describe it as. 2 or 3 young, innovative thinkers will join, and then the rest of it's people that are like would have what I call shag carpet practices, where they've waited for like 30 years to consider succession planning, and they come in and go, yeah, I'd like to sell my practice by the end of the year, and who can you help find me to pay $1 million for my practice? So what you guys did is you began with kind of the end in mind. You're like, okay, as we build this thing, let's begin the exit. Now that worked out well for Deborah. You're still there, right? so I want to kind of set the stage for that for the audience so they understand what you were talking about as far as the workshop, what the purpose of the workshop is, the nature of the workshop is really how do I build it? How do I sell it? How do I get out of it? And that's where you started, which in itself is brilliant. Nothing is going to impact your law practice like AI. The impact of AI on the legal industry will be transformative. The question is, are you prepared? Now, I've done a podcast on this previously, the 3 challenges of integrating AI into your law practice. One of the things I want to remind you is that we're teaching in 2025 a Grow Your Practice with AI course. Now, this will be taught 4 times live, but it includes 22 hours of previously recorded episodes in 2024. So episodes that we taught everything from how to use AI to look at deposition, go through complex documents, how to train your team using AI as a shortcut for team training. All those different courses are recorded and ready for your viewing. Now, if you're an Atticus member, it's already included in your membership. All you have to do is sign up for the class. We'll teach it 4 times live in 2025. Now, if you're new to Atticus and you're not an existing member, the investment is $1,500 for this program. $1,500 covers it all of 2025. Furthermore, if you are an audience member and you want to take advantage of a special code just for audience members, the code is AI Podcast 300. So when you register, it takes $300 off your investment. So the $1,500 drops to $1,200. So if you haven't taken advantage of this, it's a no-brainer deal. So if you're new to Atticus and you want to check us out, this is a great way of checking us out. It's a virtual program, so you don't have to travel anywhere. I promise you, you'll make 10 times that investment back. So with that, the information on how to register is in the link below. Look forward to seeing you there. So Sue Ann, what's your next thought on this?
So we did the succession planning very early in our business. And then because we were in this niche practice and because we were kind of cutting edge, the work just exploded. And Deborah and I both were very connected and we're both people persons and we network and I can come back to that a little bit more, but we were just a little bit famous in this very tiny, narrow niche, right? So our business was growing. We went back to Atticus to help us grow and scale because there were a lot of things that we didn't know what to do. We were lawyers, we were practitioners, we were not business owners. And so we got involved with two things. One, we got a coach. Glenn Gutek has been fantastic for us. He would come and do retreats with us, he would brainstorm, strategize, coach us. And then when he was really helping us get started and doing all the things, both the operational and the strategy and the growing and the personnel and all of how do you structure the firm and how do you pay people. And then we got connected, I believe it was at his direction, with the Dallas Dominate Your Market group. And there are probably three top things that I've done in my career that have made a big difference. That's one of them. And as you know, you can probably better describe it. Dominate Your Market. We met 4 times a year, 3 times in Dallas, once in Florida with the same group of attorneys. No one did what we did. It was a group of, plaintiffs, lawyers, personal injury lawyers, estate planning, family lawyers, and it was life changing for our business because it was strategic, it was disciplined, uh, and it was a place where I was safe to let my wild ideas just go, and others could pile on and help refine those ideas and make them into actionable items. And so Dominate Your Market was just incredible for us. And footnote, side note, bonus, many of those people still remain my friends. And you likely know there was a whole group of us that went and ran a half marathon together in Chicago. And I had dinner with Tom from New York a few months ago, and I talked to Craig from Florida, a few weeks ago, and Brenda from, Claremont is one of my attorneys for estate planning. So it was an incredible opportunity. And look, I'm still get to be in touch with you, and you were our coach.
Yeah, and you were such an incredible element of that. One of the things that you bring is that creative letting your wild ideas loose, but you have a great instinct, or maybe it's just a great knack of being curious. As you look back and you look what you've done and what you've grown, what advice would you give to other lawyers on niching or being more curious or being more innovative in their practices?
Well, I do think that, that seeing and seizing idea, I mean, I still am always looking for opportunities and just like being open and paying attention to it. And then not being afraid to take the risk, but putting bumpers around your risks. And by bumpers, I mean really good, what I call board of directors, air quote. Deborah was a great bumper around me. Atticus was a great bumper around my wild ideas. And so when we took risks, by the time we got there, we were thoughtful about it and we played it out financially and operationally and every other way. But we really definitely have taken risks, but they were thoughtful by the time we got there. And honestly, I mean, in every success story, there's a whole series of things. One is skill and hard work. Two, I think, is the seeing and seizing, the kind of identifying opportunities, but also a little bit of its luck too. And we've had that along the way. And I know sometimes people have bad luck, but if you take risks with bumpers, I think it's helpful.
Let's talk about that a little bit more because the seeing, I want to take apart the seeing. When you look, what do you pay attention to? When you're seeing, Sue Ann, you're looking, you've developed a particular perception, a particular way of seeing. What are some of the things you look for an opportunity? What are you looking for?
So maybe I can give two examples. One is when we launched our service line into Title IX investigations. And just to set the stage, the part that we deal with is sexual assault on campus. And every change in administration, every 4 years, there's a there's changes in the regulations. So what do campuses have to do with respect to their students to keep them safe on campuses? And if there is a claim of sexual assault between students, what are their obligations? Every year, those regulations change. They have to do hearings, they have to do them in person, they have to now have a hearing officer, like they change. And so we saw those changes and we've been ahead of the curve. We've studied it. We've been in touch with thought leaders across the country. We've written about it. We know what's coming. And so we can shift our business to be ready to help campuses when the new regulations come. That's one example. Another example right now is artificial intelligence. It's already touched on, the legal landscape, and we see an opportunity. It's going to touch workplace investigators too. And so we are building our own AI tool in-house to avoid all the complications of other AI tools, the getting bad data or hallucinations or bias. So we are innovating and trying to be ahead of the curve on AI for workplace investigators only, very narrow niche for us. So when we see trends coming, we try to figure out, what does this mean for us? What do we want to invest in it? How can we be a thought leader? How can we learn so we can teach others? We share. We're very collaborative and we share what we learn. So that's our latest thing.
I love them both. I want to just point something out to you that you may not notice. In order to see, you have to have your head up above your desk. And a lot of lawyers don't see beyond what's on their desk. And what you're doing is you're seeing, proactively anticipating, making some guesses, speculating a little bit. Here's where we think, for example, Title IX, we think this is what are the changes. And then you have the capability to execute very, very well based on the operational principles that you've adopted and worked with. So there's two elements to this. So as you're an audience member listening to this, I want you to pay attention to how Sue Ann's explaining this, because what she thinks is obvious is not obvious, because seeing requires you to pay attention, requires you to be curious, it requires you to pay attention to trends, pay attention to, hey, look, I know every 4 years this is going to happen. And how do we adopt, and how do we quickly get our clients to adopt to it? And how do we take advantage of it, and how do we execute? So my guess is that your operational capabilities to execute on the changes are pretty high. Like you have a capability platform to do that. But the changes are probably, you're probably at 80%, 90% guesstimating right, and you make a few adjustments. Is that about right?
Yes. And when we don't have the operational infrastructure, we build it. And so we brought in some experts on AI, for example. But yes, you're right.
Very good. Very good. But it's two elements to this. And this is what I'm trying to explain to people when they listen to you. You have the capability of paying attention, seeing, looking at the horizon, and then having the operational capability to execute on it. I had a call this morning with one of our coaches, and he was talking about this really good idea he had. And, it doesn't really matter much. I said, the ideas are great, but if you can't execute on an idea, it's worthless. And there's a lot of visionary people out there, but if they can't take that idea and execute, test it, run with it, and make money off of it, it's just another idea. It's not really anything that valuable in my eyes, which is annoying to the person who's calling you saying, I got this great idea. When you look, and let's just for fun, if you're okay, let's pivot a little bit and talk about the association you created. You up for that?
I am. But I want to do one more plug for Atticus, because I think part of the C and C's and looking up from your desk came directly from Atticus. And let me tell you why. I would say for most of my career before Atticus, my value as a lawyer was the billable hour. And I was a high biller, work around the clock person. And when I started my business, and then then we grew it with Deb, and then we started working with Atticus, one of your mantras was, you need to be a business owner. You need to be the visionary. You need to get your head out of the desk and stop the billable hours. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did, because my value, my worth was how hard I worked, was the billable hour. So I think in part what helped me be able to see and seize and to identify opportunities was really listening to the coaching through Dominate Your Market about your highest value is not your billable hour anymore as a business owner trying to grow and build this business and trying to build this niche area. So I think that's an important message I really want folks to hear, because that was really hard transition, because we're taught to be lawyers, we're taught to bill a lot, and it's a shift when you become a business owner.
Yeah, and well done, by the way. Thank you. And I will take every shout out because Atticus could use all the shout outs we can get. So I appreciate that. The work though was done by you, and being able to shift away from the identity as a producer, a billable hour producer, and realizing that you could bring and contribute so much more and contribute so much more as a visionary. And you've done that in an extraordinary way. Do you ever regret leaving that old law firm? I mean, do you ever look back and go, they're wonderful people, but gee whiz, I wish I was back there cranking out billable hours.
No, not for a minute. And I love the firm, but no. I found my passion for sure.
Yeah, not for a minute, right? So you got passion and purpose and cash coming out of the whole new niche, and you're not like going, gee whiz, I wish I was back cranking out billable hours at the old firm. Oh, I never miss it. So when you think about some of the things that you innovated on, one of the unique things I think is the association you created. Would you like to talk about that for a few minutes?
I would love to. I would love to. So this was in 2009. I was solo practitioner before Deb and I had joined. And there, as I mentioned earlier, there were a whole group of us that were solo practitioners doing workplace investigations. And many of us knew each other from the employment law field. And we were all kind of lonely. And we were all trying to figure this out alone. And there was no guidance. There was nothing around us, and we're figuring it out alone. And so we all ended up, not we all, there were a group of us that said, hey, let's get together and let's put something more formalized together where we can learn from each other. And so there were a few of us, Amy Oppenheimer and I think we're kind of known to be the leaders of it. We met on her back deck in Berkeley with a series of others, and we brainstormed this idea, and then we formed this nonprofit with a board of directors. And then we had very elementary way of picking a board of directors, and we started it with a little infusion of cash from us with some ideas, and started with, I don't even remember the number, maybe 12 board of directors. The organization since 2009 now has thousands of members in many different countries. They have a Canadian chapter in New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. We have institutes every year, 4 institutes a year with 70 people that sold out within hours of it opening. We have a conference, and we built this association of all workplace investigators across the country. So they're in-house investigators, they're external lawyers like me, and it's the most exciting thing that has ever happened. But it really established those of us that were part of that group as thought leaders, because we had to create curriculum, we had to create guiding principles, and we were teaching it, and we were leaders. And it was fantastic.
It was beautiful. So give everybody the name of the association, and we'll put it in the show notes so people can click it and check it out.
Association of Workplace Investigators.
Very simple. And the website is?
AWI.org, I believe.
AWI.org. We'll check it out. We'll put it there. But as you look back at this was a not-for-profit. You've had thousands of people attend. It's gone global. Could you ever imagine that would have done that?
No. I mean, it's amazing to me. I was part of the board for roughly, I don't even know, 10 to 12 years. I held every position. I'm past president. I still teach as faculty. And here's the thing that's interesting, if I were to say one takeaway, is that getting involved in association and getting involved in leadership is unparalleled in terms of marketing and networking. But it is also unpaid. It's a labor of love. Like, we gave our time and energy and skill to this, and it paid off in spades, because I know so many people across the country, and we collaborate. And I feel like we're thought leaders because we work together on this. We're figuring things out together. When COVID hit, I had a bank of 500 people I could call on and say, "Oh my goodness, what does this mean to our industry?"
It's interesting because you created your own not for profit, your own community, your own group of colleagues, and you became and are a thought leader in that organization, and it's gone global. So it's fascinating to see, which it's an incredible achievement just by that alone. The other thing I'd like you to talk about, which I think is fascinating, and maybe you don't think it's fascinating, but talk about T9 Mastered.
So early in my career, I had a boss who was a spectacular trainer, presenter, curriculum content creator. And the first time I got up in front of an audience, I was sick to my stomach and couldn't sleep the night before. But he was a gift to me. My boss, his name John Atticus, and he was a gifted storyteller, and he was a incredible orator. And so he really taught me to present and to teach. And I just finished 3 years of teaching at a law school for workplace investigations. But T9 Mastered was part of that. And so we created a training company to train individuals how to conduct a Title IX campus sexual assault investigation. We created the content and created the organization and networked and marketed it. And it's a whole division of our firm currently.
I love it. I love it.
Honestly, we're teachers. We love to teach what we do.
Well, I love it because, I'm a big fan of Robert Rose's work, and Robert spoke at the summit. He spoke at the summit twice on content marketing. And what I love is that you took your specialty, you created a course around it, and you're teaching other people. So you've got the law firm, which you're clearly a thought leader in. You've turned around and you created the not-for-profit, right? And then we've got T9 Mastered. All these things play together so beautifully, and they play so well together. As you look back over these innovations, is there another one that you like to share, or say you would like to highlight, or you like to point out that you're like, hey, look, this was actually fascinating, or I think this was really cool what we did here?
I think come back in, I don't know what it is, 2 or 5 years. I think the AI tool that we're working on right now is going to be pretty innovative and interesting because there's a truckload of really skilled engineers out there creating AI tools. But I don't know that there's anyone who's brought in a software engineer in the workplace investigation space narrowly that can be shared. I mean, maybe the big high tech companies are building it for themselves, but we're building a tool that I think can be shared. And so we're really excited about this. Um, so we'll see where that goes. I think I'm pretty excited.
So I've been teaching a class for the past year called Grow with AI for lawyers on how to use AI. How do you anticipate this particular product, if you feel comfortable talking about it? How do you anticipate this particular product impacting your industry?
Well, so I think there's two ways, right? One is we are creating it for our own lawyers, and we're still looking at it. Like, what does it mean for clients, and how does this help clients? How do we make sure that we're giving them the greatest product ever using it? But then there's also, if this works for us, can we develop it for other in-house attorneys? So if big high tech company has a group of workplace investigators, can they purchase it and use it? I think so. There's two ways, but certainly we are looking at using it. So I talked to you earlier about what we do. We interview a lot of witnesses. We summarize a lot of data, both from the witness interviews and the documents, and put it in a report. Can this tool help us summarize that far more quickly? Can it take 10 years worth of performance evaluations and summarize it in a quick at a glance chart that can help us look at the performance evaluations? And was there a trend for this individual that as they got older, their performance evaluations got worse? And was that fair? Can we create investigative plans or interview witness outlines? Uh, there's all kinds of things that we can do with this tool to, I think, benefit both us and the clients in investigations eventually.
I think it's going to streamline a lot of things without a doubt. Okay, I'm going to ask you a completely different question. Are you okay if I pivot on you?
Of course.
You've done two things very, very well. It may not feel like it at the time, but how do you advise or how do you think about leading people and leading teams through changes? Because you've gone through some significant changes in your own life. You've gone through significant changes when you had a new partner join when Deborah exited. How do you think about managing change and leading change in your career and life?
So one thing is to be aware of who I am because I like change, I embrace change, and I move fast and furious. And I've had to learn many times the hard way that that's not how to lead. It's not what my team likes. They like certainty and stability and understanding the why behind the change. And part of it is Deb was good at that, and I've had people around me that are good at that and can, slow me down. But I get that. I mean, there is a certain amount of stability and certainty. It's just not how I operate. I think I'm not a shiny new object kind of person, but I am a this looks exciting. Let's go explore it. So the biggest thing I think is to really understand people where they are, and I think bringing people along is really helpful. Uh, Giving them the why behind it, but maybe more than that, bringing them in along the process so they can make the change even better. There's always implications to change that I don't see where I sit. And so having more voices around me to say, okay, but did you think about this downstream effect? Did you think about what this means? Has been really, really helpful.
So in your case, you put together a team. You recognize, okay, I like it. My team may not. And then I've got to think through a process of how to get my team to look at the change, understand the change, and perhaps embrace the change. And not all changes are worth executing on or moving forward on, right? And being able to be clear on how to score it and think about it. If there's a young lawyer out there listening to you and you could pass on some advice to them, let's say that they're struggling in their practice or struggling at a large firm, or they're just struggling and they're trying to figure out, I'm not sure if I like doing this anymore. I'm not sure if I like what my future looks like. What advice would you give them?
Wow. Um, that's a really good question. And I guess the way you're putting it, you phrased it as they're currently not sure where they are, what they're doing. I mean, I guess I think of it more generally because I've been a happy lawyer, and so that's a good thing. But I recognize not everybody is. But there's a lot of law out there, and maybe it's you're not in the right space. I would not be a good transactional lawyer. I would not be a good family law lawyer. Those are not my passions, interests, skills. And so there's a lot of ways to use your license. And so I think that's important is looking at what it is that you don't like and what it is you do like, and then finding that. That would be one thing. I'm also just a fan of getting involved in things that are your passion. Just in terms of marketing, if you even think about that, it doesn't make sense to add something to your plate that you're not excited about. But if you can marry your passion with marketing, it makes so much sense. So if you love animals and then get into some organization, SBCA, but get involved in leadership and organization, and it will naturally be a marketing thing. So for new lawyers, as you're looking at how to figure out what you like in life, go do what you love, and then look for opportunities of how that can marry into your career. I don't know if that's a great answer, but we have limited time. And so if you can make both your work and your passions work together, it's really helpful.
I love that. Great practice, great life. If you can combine them, it's a good combo.
Right.
It's a good combo. So as we start to wrap up, I've got one more question for you. Actually, one more. I got a couple more questions for you. But as we start to wrap up, if you could go back and talk to Sue Ann, who just opened up her solo practice before she partnered with Deborah, what would you say to her? What words of advice would you pass on?
Wow. I wish you kind of had the hindsight of the lessons at that. I mean, there's so much insecurity and uncertainty and laying awake at night worrying about things that all turns out. And the knowledge and the confidence that you have once you've done it, if you could just translate that back then, it would be so helpful. Uh, so I think it is just that have confidence in where you are and continue to surround yourself with really, really great people and organizations like Atticus. I mean, it really was life changing. I'm not just saying that because you're interviewing me. It really was a great deal for us. But when we felt insecure or uncertain, if that's a better word, we went and sought the advice of people who knew about it. And we had so many different meetings with managing partners and with clients that we knew and trusted and asked questions and went and did webinars and podcasts. And then we would teach others when we learned things really well. So I think we just really leaned into it. And that was really important for us. And I would tell Sue Ann to do that all over again, but don't be quite as hard on yourself as you were.
You can be very hard on yourself, can't you?
Yes.
You can be just a little brutal. The ability to say it's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Trust yourself. It's all going to play out just beautifully. It's easy to say in retrospect, but difficult to say at the time. But you're speaking from a point of extreme success and great wisdom now. Fast forward 10 years, and as you look at your My Great Decade, the next 10 years, where do you see yourself a decade from now? Where do you see the industry? Where do you see yourself as a leader? Where do you see yourself pushing the envelope? Where do you see yourself innovating?
In a great life world, my firm would be humming along without me or with me only as an advisor as needed, because we've set up the infrastructure so well and because we have great lawyers coming up that are interested and want to build the business even to the next level. Uh, I also, as you know, had a pretty seismic change in my personal life since you've known me. Took the big risk and went through a divorce. And so this next phase of my life is very exciting to me because I get to now travel with somebody that I partnered with. I get to build a new life with him. My daughters got married this year, both of them, and they're building their lives. So I see being very engaged in their families as they build it. And because of my success, I'm hoping that I can spend the time and launch them in their new lives. So that's where I see myself.
Very good, very good. Congratulations. In all the years that I've known you, this is the most you smiled. This is the happiest you've sounded. This is the most comfortable and confident you've sounded. Not that you haven't sounded in the past, but you definitely have really grown tremendously, both professionally and personally. It's really remarkable to talk to you. Anything you want to say before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, well, I would say in all sincerity, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you to you and Glenn and for everything Atticus did to us. Deborah and I, after we were no longer business partners, when she retired, we had to learn a new cadence, right? We saw each other every day and we were business partners and friends. We've had to be purposeful about how do we build a new relationship just as friends. And it has been fantastic. And I love being her friend only now, but we often will commiserate and regale stories of old, and Dominate Your Market is absolutely one of them. And just a little side note, we just went on a backroads trip to Italy with a whole group of 20 people that I put together and know, and Deb and her husband were two of them. So it was fantastic.
Oh, that's fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. You're very kind to acknowledge us, but you are just a delight to coach and a delight to work with, and you're not afraid to take risk, and you're not afraid to innovate, and you're not afraid to make changes. So congratulations, just absolutely congratulations. And thanks for being part of the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for joining this week's episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Please tune in weekly to get the next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, like, and don't hesitate to share it with a friend who you think this episode can help. With that, thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's episode.